Hey everybody, welcome back. Bryant, the restaurant giant, here with part one of the restaurant reopening strategy. Quick recap, this is a 5-part video series in the restaurant reopening strategy, and in part one, we're going to focus on the new menu construct. So oftentimes, the world according to the restaurant business has existed in phase one of the menu, which is ideation. What can we do that will fit on the menu that'll make great sense? Step two is let's cook it, try it, and taste it, and hopefully price it, model it, and make sure it's profitable. Step three is let's get some feedback from everybody else. Step four is historically, let's throw it onto some paper. And if you're lucky, step five is what we would talk about when we say menu engineering, how we're going to place what, where, the language, the verbiage, pictures if we're going to use them, placement strategy, pricing strategy, etc. A lot of that is missing a really critical gap. I'm going to share with you a world-class process that I have developed and engineered and used with a number of clients for many years that has had tremendous success. And I've updated it relative to the restaurant reopening strategies post-COVID-19 when the lights do get turned back on. So first and foremost, as many of us have already realized, out of necessity, we had to create smaller menus. And I'm encouraging you to not go back to what you used to do, especially if you had a really large menu. There are a number of advantages to a smaller menu, and we're going to talk about those. Of course, I'm featuring In-N-Out Burger, one of the most successful concepts. I believe they've been around somewhere north of 70 years. This menu has not changed nearly at all in those years. Most recently, as they've expanded into Colorado, they've added hot chocolate. One time in the 70s, I think they added a limeade. That was about it for any menu iteration or adjustment that they did. Let's talk about what they and a lot of other small menu concepts have figured out. The smaller the menu, the lower the overall burden or inventory cost is. If you don't have dollars tied up on your shelves, hopefully that means you've got more cash flow in your bank. And liquidity is critical to being able to pivot right now more than ever. There's also a lower labor burden, less to prep, less to manage, less people to cook in a smaller kitchen or smaller environment. Obviously that makes perfect sense. Here's the critical factor. Less is more. You can put out higher quality product, and consumer sentiment has showed us this for years and years and years. The guest does not trust a large menu is going to be great quality. And because of that, they expect that it's going to be more economically priced, and you get into a price war and you're pissing in the wind. It's a terrible uphill battle, and one that I would encourage for nobody. Next, faster execution. This dovetails well into the labor burden. If you can execute the product faster with less people at a higher quality and have a lower burden of inventory, this seems to be a pretty intelligent strategy. What's more, if you can realize similar, equal, or greater sales than you used to with the smaller menu, you now create a product volume leverage strategy. If you're spending $1 million a year in groceries with a menu double the size, imagine what you can do now with half the menu. You're using more of a specific kind of product because you have less inventory. Now you can go to manufacturers and brokers, other elements within the supply chain community to leverage a better deal. And that is conversation for a different time, but certainly something to consider. Outside of that, I really want to dive in and talk to you about my menu construct rules as it applies to this reopening strategy. So this is kind of my menu construct feasibility map, and these are the things that I require when we roll out a new menu. First and foremost, the product has to fit the brand. That is critical. Next, we look for what's called a POD, or a point of differentiation. If we put the exact same product out as everybody else, then the consumer will have a relative value in their head of what that product is worth, thus crippling our ability to capitalize on something unique. If it's unique and nobody knows how much it costs, then nobody knows how much we're making, and we can use that to our advantage. So the item has to have some element of uniqueness, some point of differentiation. Next, we have to ask ourselves, what is the labor impact of each item going to be? What's the total prep time? What's the total shelf life of the item that's prepped? And how often do we have to do it within a weekly cycle? All of this is really critical. That's not just in plating the item, that's in the buildup on the prep side. And it does also consider the impact of constructing the plate on the line, how far they have to run from one station to another to grab the ingredients to finish the plate or hand it down the line to another person to execute a portion of the completion. Whew! All right, next, we need to consider station balance. So what I mean by that, a typical restaurant is going to have grill, saute, broiler, cold pantry side, maybe salad and dessert station, whatever your restaurant looks like, however many different stations. You need to try to find station balance so that you're not just heavily weighted in one area that's going to kill one person while everybody else is standing around. Next, we have to think about the profitability alignment, and this is multifaceted. I need you to listen. This is super important. Profitability alignment means this. It has to be priced right on the menu according to where the guest's threshold and perception of our business pricing is, and it also has to be balanced in conjunction to the profit dollars that the item makes us and the percentage of food cost that the item has. And I'll give you a really quick example. A salad with a $10 cost on the menu at a 25% food cost is going to make us $7.50. Whereas a steak on the menu at a $40 plate cost with a 40% food cost is going to make us $24. That's an obvious, exaggerated example, but would you rather make $7.50 or $24? It's a no-brainer, but we have to balance the contribution to dollars made as well as the consideration of the food cost percentage. Both of those are critical, and it all ties into the perceived value that the guest expects to pay in a concept similar to ours. This is obviously one of the most critical elements of this entire construct design. Next, we have to think about ticket time, and it's less about an individual item's ticket time, and it's more about the symphony of the entire menu. How, if every single item was ordered, would we be able to execute all of those within a relatively similar amount of time? We can take some of the guesswork out of having to fire different tickets at different times based on how long something takes to make. We've all done this our entire life, and we all know that it doesn't make sense. And even the most dynamic KDS system in the world is not going to prevent us from putting up food too early while we're waiting on other food that's lagging, simply because we didn't have any type of a time rule in the execution of our plates and try to make that a standard or a standard range for every item on the menu. Now, I know that's really heady, but please consider that, because it is truly something that will help with the overall efficacy of the way that food comes out of the kitchen. Next, the items have to be travel tested. There's never been a larger burden on restaurants right now to put out high quality food that will travel well, whether the guest is picking it up or whether you're having it delivered. Right now, over the last month, we've seen an incredibly disproportionate ratio of items going out the door, obviously because nobody's coming in to sit. This isn't going to go away. The consumer confidence, when they turn the lights back on and open the doors, they're not just going to come flooding in and be happy that you removed every other table so that they can sit in a petri dish, because that's their fear, is that they're going to catch this thing. They're going to continue to take food to go or to get food delivered. So in this new menu construct, we've got to build food that's travel tested. Next, we also have to consider the inventory impact of our entire menu. This goes back to having a small menu. If you have a small menu that doesn't cross-utilize any items, then you really didn't accomplish much by being able to lower your inventory cost by lowering your burden of inventory on hand. So think about multiple different ways to reutilize, represent, and retreat any particular ingredient and do it in a way that isn't just avocado on every single dish. You can have a fried avocado, you can have fresh avocado, diced avocado, guacamole. Think expansively around the raw ingredients and how many different applications you can get out of them and apply that to this menu. We tend to use a rule that if the item is perishable and it's only used on one dish, the dish will not pass through our construct rules. In fact, we tend to ask that if there's a perishable item that has to be added to inventory, that it be used in at least 3 different applications across the menu. If not, then it suffers a high likelihood that it will not get passed or approved for the menu. Finally, we need to think about scalability. And what I mean by scalability is, how can we shift the presentation of this item? And we've always thought like this, but now it's just a bit more expanded. And so what I mean by scalability, what items could we take off of our traditional menu, replate, reportion, and reprice to make those available for a happy hour item? Well, now I want you to take that same type of thinking serving and consider how can we take the dish and either portion it down for an individual serving, up for maybe a takeaway family meal, or up even further for a large catering drop-off or a catering pickup, right? Scalability is critical, and of course it has to go part and parcel with every single other one of these elements. This is the construct. This is the pass-fail test that every item has to go through when we build a new menu. If we can hold true to these construct rules, we will have a larger degree of success. And since we're talking about menu construct, I want to talk about some additional considerations, some ideas and thoughts for you guys to take moving forward. Create a menu planning calendar. So even at my most basic restaurants, we weren't changing the menu all the time, but we did a menu shift, a seasonal menu shift, and we would tend to do a fall and a spring menu shift, and it was on the calendar, and we put it on the calendar with days that everybody knew when those days were coming. New menu was due by Labor Day, and that was a fall menu, and the new spring menu was due right after Easter. Now, that gave us a fall and a spring menu, and we would make our shifts from the heavier protein, heavier eating that the average person does throughout the winter months, and then shift into the spring when produce starts coming online and fresher product and healthier and people trying to get that beach body ready, whatever, for summer. We would make that shift to some lighter fare. We wouldn't rewrite the entire menu. We would just do a shift to accent the food type by season type and availability, and that would give us an opportunity to make a couple of tweaks. So I encourage everybody to create a menu planning calendar. You could do the same thing 4 times a year. You could do it every single month if you wanted to, but whatever fits you best, make sure that you actually have calendar planned dates. One of the other best practices that I've seen are concepts that designate an approval committee, and they use a wide cross section. They'll bring somebody in from marketing, maybe a couple of people in from the kitchen, somebody from the leadership team, maybe somebody from the front of the house, hourly or, head position, and maybe even a coveted guest or a couple of outside people to sit down as they go through the construct rules and pass all of that. Then it's about the plating and the wording and the menu engineering and the taste and the perceived value and what's going to work, etc. Next is capture all of this in a checklist. I don't have this all in a checklist. I'd probably need to create it and upload it so that all of you guys have this, but you might have your own existing checklist and maybe you're just going to fold some of these new concept pieces into it. I would strongly encourage that. Next, we have to move on to testing, tasting, and sampling. And again, across a wide cross section. Get the feedback, make sure that it works, make sure that it fits the environment, the expectation of the guest, etc. And the next 2 pieces are really critical. When we do a menu change, we have to announce it, both internally and externally. Put it on the wall, letting people know when the date is. Create excitement about it, let them know that it's happening. Do it internally. Post pictures of the plated food with some bites taken out of it. Make it look actionable and consumable. Put it on all of your different websites. Update your menu on your website through all your social channels, etc. And then the promotion. And this is where you can create incentive, but also information. Let the guests know the technique that's going into the food, why, how you came up with the idea, why you think it's important, what's so unique about the dish, that point of differentiation. Don't be afraid to promote that. So these are some additional considerations within the process. And that's pretty much it for menu construct. Like I said, trying to keep these videos relatively short and sweet and to the point. In part 2 of our strategy, we're going to dive into the new labor construct. We have all learned over a short amount of time what it means to be lean and what it means to do a lot with a little bit of people, a little bit of money, and trying to put out as much food to generate as much revenue as possible. This has helped shape some new thinking and some new disciplines that's going to be critical, and we're going to talk about how we deconstruct some old rules, some dumb, in my opinion, some silly old legacy rules that probably shouldn't have stuck around as long as they did, and we're going to show you how to repurpose people. We're going to show you how to identify if the job that's being done is being done by a person or by a process. And if it's a process, then you don't need a person doing the process. We can use capture, training, expectations, and we can put that into a process foundation, educate everybody on it, and then we don't need the babysitter of the process to be taking up that income. Anyway, provocative, very, very cool content, something different than what you've ever heard. I hope you really enjoy that second part of the video. Stay tuned. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Please share this information with people in the industry. If you found it valuable, I think everybody else will too. We got to sharpen our pencils. We got to start planning. We got to get ready to do it right because I think we're only going to have one chance. So I appreciate you guys. Stay tuned for the next one. Talk to you soon. Bye.